Very welcome along this Monday morning. It's Sharon Owen with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. It was a bewildering weekend of sport with so much coming at you. If there's something you want to get off your chest, if there's a viewpoint you'd like us to air, whatever you want, feel free to leave a comment on the YouTube stream, or you can text us on 0879 180 180. As well as that, we're on Twitter at Off The Ball AM. Owen, good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, Ger. How are you?
Where do you want to start?
Oh, a bewildering weekend. That's one way to describe it. What bewildered you more than anything else?
Well, you would have missed all the great stuff. Six-goal thriller in the Camogie. Hannah Tyrrell, who we're going to speak to in about 10 minutes, or sorry, in about half an hour, kicks a winner in stoppage time in women's football, which is like after the buzzer, really. It's like there's literally room for the last kick of the game, which is a brilliant thing. Like, there's a great thing happening over there. If only we could do this. Or where, like, time is 0-0-0, and you know it's win or bust at this. There's no, like, oh, let the referee kick it out. Let them have one more go. Oh, that's not fair. It's like, no, that's the rules. Everybody knows what it is. There's a clock. Everybody's seeing the clock, and there was a huge crowd at it as well. Manchester United, I mean, come on. We're going to get into that in the performance ranking in a minute, so I know that we're not going to talk too much about it. But the other side of the Manchester United stuff is that everybody's focused on the Man United stuff, but that City team in that second half, well, you know, when you buy the right players and you have the right management in place and everybody knows what they're supposed to do, it's a pretty compelling spectacle.
Yeah, it is, and like I think that there is sort of a similar situation here where this could have been like, where it was exactly like the first game between these two sides, where it could have been a lot worse on the scoreline for Manchester United. I think getting away with 6-1 on aggregate over the two games is an absolute miracle for Manchester United.
Would you say, Owen, it was a moral victory? Would you say that you know, a team
yes,
as good as Manchester City, if you accept that? That was the Duffer setup.
Yeah.
But go on.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely a moral victory. No, I'm not even giving the Duffer credit to Manchester United on this occasion. I think that they will walk off feeling that this could have been a Liverpool style hammering, which both of these games could very well have been. Like when you've got Joao Cancelo trying semi-bicycle kicks from outside the area when there was absolutely, well, okay, maybe there was a little bit of a need, but there wasn't really any need to do it. And when you got the fans doing the pause now, they're not even watching the game, you know things have got pretty bad. And like, I mean, we've sat here so many times and said this is the lowest of the low, this is the worst it can get.
It's not, though.
I'm not sure if it is, because we're still on this kind of water slide of doom for Manchester United. I don't think they've splashed into the pool just yet.
No, what a great analogy.
That is a Monday morning analogy right there.
We'll come back to that a little bit later on. In the hurling, Tony Kelly was doing Tony Kelly stuff after, like, you know, comes straight back into the team after injury and is just as good, if not even better, than he ever has been. And Limerick still without a win. They're not worried though, because they've used a gazillion players in the league. Are we just saying this is exactly what you would do if you were the manager of a team like that? You know that they're going to be brilliant come championship time. You want to find some new players. You want to strengthen the depth that you have, and this does not matter. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, it does not matter. Like, there is no way that we can look at in the recent past of the hurling league and say that it matters to these teams, because it just doesn't. It doesn't matter anywhere near as much as, say, the football league would matter to football teams. It's just given the format, given the lack of threat. Like, there will be. It is a cliche that's thrown out about so many Premier League teams that are too good to get relegated. They'll be fine. Like, Limerick are going to be fine, obviously, because they still have to play Offaly, don't they? So they'll get a win in that game and they'll stay up and they'll preserve their position. And that's all you need to do, as long as you're playing these games and throwing the untested players in against the other top counties in the months of February and March. That's all the hurling league exists for nowadays.
Sorry, it was a bewildering weekend. Rassie Rasmus says he didn't leak the video. That was yesterday. Today he says he thinks the South Africa should be in the Six Nations. There's that. We haven't even talked about Bennett scoring, was it 116 against Tipperary? Tipperary also. What the hell happened then in the hurling? There was something else there that you were Jack Byrne was in studio on Saturday with the lads on OTB Football Saturday, and the conversation turned to Cian Lynch, and he was like, yeah, Cian Lynch is one of the best footballers I've ever seen. Bear in mind, like, Jack Byrne came through at Man City with like a group of some of the best footballers that the world is actually watching on a day-to-day basis. He's like, oh, that guy was the best footballer on the pitch when we were playing against him. Cian Lynch, 2-footed, left down, right foot. I'm like, right. Would he have been a striker? Is that what it is? Like, is this one of those great lost? He's like, anyway, go back and look at the clip. It was sensational.
Like,
was something else, was there? Is there something else?
But
Rory McIlroy.
Yeah.
McIlroy, like, shoots the lights out Thursday. Worst round of the week, Sunday. Okay.
Yeah, well, I to be honest with you, I don't care one bit about Rory McIlroy. I don't care one bit about that particular tournament. The Puerto Rico Open is where things were at the weekend. So, I mean, you can take your top tier PGA Tour professionals all you want, but for me, it's for the genuine players at the Puerto Rico Open. Not least.
What's the course where the Puerto Rico Open was held?
The Grand Reserve Country Club. Where we had a 35-year-old Michigan player called Ryan Brem shoot the lights out, win by 6 strokes at the end. Just so happens that Ryan Brem may have been one of John Duggan's tips in Virtual Insanity last week, and I may or may not be on the Virtual Insanity bandwagon this year. I can officially say at 7:36 on this Monday morning, I would die for Ryan Brem. And I would also die for John Duggan, to be honest with you, and Virtual Insanity. What an absolutely phenomenal moment this was to be a 50-1 shot. I think actually 66-1 is what John got him at, and watch him coast home at the end. He goes right into the pantheon alongside Luke List of 2022 golf heroes. So Virtual Insanity, it's not been a bad year so far.
Yeah, okay. So otbsports.com/virtual insanity if you want the update on that. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Our performance rankings are imminent. Hannah Tyrrell is going to join us at 8:10. We've got the sports pages at 8:30. We'll get Cathal Maloney's assessment on Rory McIlroy. After that, David Moyler is going to join us at 8:45 to look back on another routine enough squeaky bum time win for Liverpool, which put the pressure on Manchester City. And how did they respond to the pressure? By absolutely thumping Manchester United. Alan Quinn is going to join us at 9:10. Manu Tuilagi is out. Ireland are going to win next weekend. It's as simple as that. And then Jack Byrne goodness coming your way at 9:30. At 7:37 though, it is time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performance was just lacked that intensity.
Boom. Right. I noticed you were in the green. You're putting yourself in the green this week, Owen. It's a bit of a flex move from you to go, I am green. Because you're the king.
I'm the powerful overlord on this desk over here as I wage war in a kind of multiverse that's very, very far away from here.
The Wizard of Oz.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, you're the one playing the piano behind the... That's you. So, Hannah, good God, United are shambles, says Shane. They should occupy both right positions on the rankings. And Brian says, Rory, lads. Rory.
Like, the thing is, these two stories are actually relatively similar. One is very predictable and a sort of a disaster waiting to happen whenever you watch them, and the other one is either Rory McIlroy or Manchester United, depending how you want to deliver that punchline. And I think there was an inevitability to it. I think that the lads on Thursday Night Show, Joe and Nathan, were talking about how an early first-round lead for Rory McIlroy is not something that gives you a lot of confidence whatsoever. Now, I guess the flip side to that is that Manchester United going up against Manchester City at the Etihad might have been something that would have given Manchester United fans some level of confidence given their record in that fixture over the last 5 or 6 years. But I do think that what yesterday exposed was that that statistic was a little bit of a fluke over the last little while. There was a certain degree of tactical shrewdness, I would say, around Solskjaer's era, where he was able to take down some of the better teams. But I think all of that was probably absent yesterday. I think the players have shipped most of the blame. And it's really interesting because of who is kind of taking on most of this blame. Because with no Cristiano Ronaldo in the team yesterday, you had one of their go-to scapegoats not available for any scapegoating yesterday. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong that Ronaldo has taken a lot of the blame for Manchester United's performances this season, but the blame was there, and it wasn't possible to blame him yesterday. What was also interesting, I thought, is that Paul Pogba gets taken off after 64 minutes, and arguably their worst quarter of football is after that. And I'm not saying that if Paul Pogba stays on, he would have, G'd his team up to put in a far more enthusiastic performance than the complete collapse that we saw yesterday. But it's just telling that all of a sudden, possibly the two most scapegoatable people, with the exception of maybe Harry Maguire, weren't actually on the pitch for that last quarter, which was a complete and utter shambles. And I think Roy Keane has gone to he's gone nuclear with the kind of the sort of comments that he's made yesterday. So I don't think there's. I think the embarrassment, a shame on you, I think was his phrase. Then there's nowhere left to go after that. So this has to be the lowest point so far.
It has to be the lowest point so far. I guess. Well, there have been seasons where they haven't qualified for the Champions League. Obviously, not many, but it has happened. Like. This is the middle of the cycle. This is we're not near the end. Like, because say a new manager comes in and say you get Jurgen Klopp, it takes him time to get the squad to the level where it needs to be. And you look around the squad, like there's bits where you think, okay, maybe under the right manager, somebody like Jadon Sancho played okay in that first half yesterday. You can do stuff with him. But of the rest of the players who are there, is Bruno the tactical anarchist that's people say, or is that just because he has yet to find a manager who actually can unlock him? Ronaldo's not going to be there next season, more than likely. You start going through the team. The two sub fullbacks, are they better than the allegedly first choice fullbacks? It's hard to tell the difference between them. They're all relatively interchangeable, but maybe under a brilliant manager, somebody like Antonio Conte, who had the ability to improve people. And I'm not saying Conte himself, but somebody like that, or maybe Conte himself, who knows? Like, is there anybody in that squad who you're going to think, okay, I'm going to hang my hat on this? Fred, McTominay, Maguire, Lindelof. Who's staying? Even De Gea, who is a brilliant shot stopper, isn't really set up to be the type of goalkeeper who's going to take the ball off the defenders, move them up the pitch a bit, distribute the ball brilliantly the way all of the other top teams have goalkeepers who can do that. Like, this is not the beginning of the end. This is not even the end of the beginning. Yeah.
This is a team that has been overhauled, and they've looked at the overhaul, and they very much do not like the look of it. So it's all of a sudden you're getting into the second and third stages of the post Alex Ferguson transition. The first transition, like you'd probably say, Moyes into Van Gaal was a complete disaster. The middle kind of Jose Solskjaer era, also not great, and now this is sort of like the third wave, it feels, of
the cultural reset. Remember that?
What was that about?
That was Solskjaer and the previous administration, as it was now, before the current CEO, talked about a cultural reset where they were going to get out of the boom or bust cycle of sacking managers and spending big on players who failed. There will be no more Angel Di Marias. Now it's going to be Harry Maguire's. Nothing seems to work. I saw somebody on Twitter, like, Maguire, the ball comes back off for the second goal when it's 1-1 still, and you might be able to claw your way to victory, or at least a 1-1. The ball comes back from the first shot, and Maguire lets it run through his legs back into play, as opposed to just hoofing it out. Even the stuff that he can do, he's not doing. That was nothing to do with being flat-footed or not having pace. It was just it's just a brain fart.
Yeah, but what's really interesting is where is that coming from? What we're now seeing is a sort of mental capitulation in so many significant moments for Manchester United now as well, that clearly the severity of the situation has got inside all of their heads, and they've completely frozen as footballers as well. So Harry Maguire isn't good enough for Manchester United. I think we all know that. But he's also not as bad as he's been showing over the last couple of weeks, because there is also the mental aspect of this thing, which means he's just completely bereft of confidence, does not believe in his ability to do something very simple, like put the ball out for a corner when the ball is right near 6-yard box. And what we're seeing is just a complete shambles from him at this point. That's actually worse than the real Harry Maguire, I would say. I'm not saying the real Harry Maguire is any good, but the version that we're seeing at the moment is even worse than the bad reality that he is. So it's everything is just slowly but surely getting worse, and
the trouble is that they're stuck, because if you come in as the manager and the chief executive and football guys are saying, look, we've invested so much money in this and we've got loads of sunk costs in this, can you make this work? The likelihood is that they're going to find a manager who goes, yeah, I can make that work, no problems, of course I can rescue Maguire, I can get that money back for you, I can keep David De Gea, I can keep these players, and you just need a little tweak, an extra 5-10%. But that's wrong. Those players are not going to be able to win the league. Those players are not going to be players who catapult you to winning a Champions League or competing for a Champions League. That's not going to happen. You need that full clear out to happen, and that does not happen in one transfer window. It happens over a long period of time, And it happens through a period of bad results as you're like integrating new players into the team. And it could take a team not being very good for a significant chunk. And I'm not saying years and years, but like it could be 18 months of the next manager coming in and apparently failing while building something new before you actually start seeing the fruits of what they're doing. But unless you have that vision collectively that everybody is behind, then nothing's going to fix.
Yeah, and like you talk about a cultural reset that may or may not have been attempted at Manchester United a few years ago. Like, I don't think that was replicated whatsoever in terms of the personnel. There was no personnel reset. There was the constant policy of arriving at the summertime and saying, right, who can we spend 80 million quid on this summer to try and paper over a crack in the team? Like, it was completely rejected almost as a talking point yesterday on Sky when Dave Jones tried to bring up the idea that maybe Manchester United should look towards an Arsenal model. I'm not saying that the Arsenal model has worked or anything like that. We'll see at the end of the season. But it will be better than the current way Manchester United are going. Like, have a policy, have some sort of identity in terms of your recruitment, saying, right, we're going to go young for the time being. And it's not like Arsenal have spent no cash. They were the biggest spenders last summer, but they were spending it on a plan. Again, time will tell whether or not this thing does work out, but it's a plan at least. There's a recruitment drive towards, getting younger players in who play a certain brand of football, and they know exactly who their manager is and what style of football their manager at least wants to play. And there is a gamble to it. Of course, there's a gamble with everything you do in football, but it feels like Manchester United are gambling completely blind. They're not even looking at what the dealer has. They're just completely saying, right, let's just keep lumping on this.
Look at what Arsenal did when they had to make the decision about spending the money to get rid of Aubameyang and continuing to have his influence at the club. They spent the money to get rid of him. They sacked him. They paid him off. He's now going off and doing great stuff for somebody else, but they're not concerned about that because they made the right decision for them, even though they couldn't get anybody in at the last moment and they didn't get Vlahovic. Manchester United could have got Vlahovic. That's the difference. Like, if you are Man United, you can accelerate the process. If you have a process in place, you can spend big, but you need to get rid of all those players who are clogging up the opportunities and who aren't trying to leg and who are writing sorry, just while we're on the statements issue, right? I mean, because that was one of the big clips that Sky Sports picked out for Keane yesterday. Did you see the John Joe Shelby statement?
No, in relation to...
They won.
Yeah.
Newcastle won.
Yeah.
Newcastle issued a statement from John Joe Shelby yesterday where he said he was disappointed with his own performance and that he would do better, but it was great that they managed to dig out the win anyway. I was like, a winning player making an apology statement. I didn't understand it. Who's the market for this? Who is the target market? Like, are there people going, yeah, good man, Shelby? Like,
there might be.
I'm going to die for you now, John Joe.
There might be.
I will chant louder because you have issued this apology statement. Maybe he was getting booed by the fans. I don't know. But I can't imagine they're booing Shelby. Like, is he not one of their... Anyway, sorry. We got distracted.
I think there may be, there has to be some sort of method to this. Like, maybe there is very one-eyed fans who feel personally insulted by a couple of misplaced passes here and there, and they demand an apology, and they do really view themselves as customers. And
we should pander to those people. They're the best people that we need to keep on our side. It's important we always act with their best interest. You should always have one of those imaginary in your head going, what would the top off rippling dude say now? When is he booing my sideways pass? He probably is. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, every week we're giving away a Gillette Labs shaving kit. To be with a chance of winning, let us know who you think should make the performance rankings. Best place to enter is the Off The Ball Instagram page. You'll see the comments box in our story.
Yeah, I'm just reading that John Joe Shelby statement. That's absolutely bonkers. Isaac Hayden came out to quote tweet this statement and was like a Rolls Royce of a player. Excellent again yesterday during a tough game with not a lot of ball. So not sure, did he play well or did he not play well? Somebody's lying here in the case of John Joe Shelby against Brighton at the weekend. It is not Manchester United in the other red slot today, believe it or not. We're actually going to go to the Antrim hurling here, which feels a little bit harsh, but the reality of why we want to bring this up is actually because of Cheddar Plunkett's comments in the aftermath of the game yesterday between Laois and Antrim. Laois beat Antrim by a point, 120 to 119. Obviously a massive win for Laois in the context of getting relegated and trying to stay up in the top tier in Division 1 of hurling. And he says, I have a great graw for Antrim. They're in a similar position to ourselves. To be honest with you, nobody in the GEA gives a fiddlers about our counties. It's up to ourselves to do something about us, because nobody else is going to do it for us. I have great regard for the Carlows and Westmeaths and Antrims. We know for the last 20 or 30 years we're in that middle tier. All of us, including ourselves in Antrim, think we have the ability to step up. We need support to do that, and it's not forthcoming. That's why I have massive regard for Antrim hurling and their club hurling. And he said it would give him the greatest pleasure to see Antrim bursting through this bloody ceiling. And like, he's not the first person to say this, but it is interesting. This is coming from an inter-county manager who's playing in Division 1 at the moment. And it sometimes feels, and we've had this conversation already on the show this morning, that the hurling league gets a bit of a bashing because it's not as good as the league championship. And the league championship is amazing because you've got the best teams in the country going toe-to-toe at the best time of the year. And I guess if we wanted everything our own way in the National Hurling League at the moment, we would see just the top teams going up against just the other top teams. It would just be a Munster Championship all over again, and we wouldn't have Laois and Antrim in the division, which is admittedly very unfair and not right when you think about how you actually want to try and improve the game. There is an elite coterie of counties who are obviously pushing the standards out further and further, and the only way that that's not going to happen, the only way you have some sort of connection between them and the rest, is if teams like Antrim and Laois are actually playing in with them. But then at the same time, the flip side of it is that there's sometimes a bit of window dressing, and they will constantly be yo-yo teams. So I don't know. I don't know what if these comments get many people exercised this morning, but it is interesting that you do have somebody coming out as an inter-county manager saying they don't care about us.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, it's a team who are going to be in Division 1 again next year as a result of this. It obviously heartbreaking for Antrim hurling, given how well they've played. Their points differential, I think, is like 7 or 8 points. Laois's points differential is -40. Antrim's is -7, and Antrim they've lost every game by a score or two. They could have drawn / beaten Waterford last week, and then this week they lose to Antrim. They lose to Laois and Portlaoise, which is devastating for them and the work they put in, because really you would have made them favourites to win that game. But I think in his moment of victory, the fact that Cheddar Plunkett has taken this opportunity to look across and say, we need help and we need to be listened to, and somebody needs to do something for us. It's up to us. He was very reflexive. It is up to us to help ourselves. But like the other hurling counties, they're the ones with the actual power to do something about this. Kilkenny could reach over and help Laois. It would be in their long-term interest to do so. Cork and Tipperary and Galway. I mean, in fairness, if you look at the shit show that has been getting Galway and underage Galway teams into Leinster, you would get the impression that hurling people are less, certainly the administrators in those hurling counties are less interested in helping other hurling counties than they would pretend to be. That there's a lot of lip service and a lot of talk about it. But ultimately, the problem gets solved by money and investment. If you invest in coaches and games development officers in hurling in these counties, you could get the standard up massively over a long period of time. It takes a long period of time. It takes a massive amount of investment. But who's advocating for that? Where's that conversation happening?
Yeah, the reality is it's not, and we're going to have these little islands of hurling, like particularly when you look at the case of Antrim trying to punch above its weight, kind of on its own, swimming away, and what we're going to have is a constant sort of purgatory of this thing where the glass ceiling probably won't be broken, but it can be broken, and maybe something does change down the line. We move on to the Amber this morning. We've got England rugby in there this morning, the Grand. It is England week. Of course, in the Six Nations, Paul O'Connell described them as bubbling along last week. Eddie Jones himself has said that we are blatantly trying to peak for the World Cup, but the patience is wearing thin, I think it's fair to say, within England rugby supporters around Eddie Jones, around the fact that maybe he's put his hands up and said, listen, we're not actually overly worried about how we finish up in this year's Six Nations or even next year's Six Nations. You've got Manu Tuilagi, who's got injured yet again. A few questions around the intensity of those training camps that puts his hamstrings under such pressure that he's now going to miss another couple of games. And I guess it's good news for Ireland. Where England are at is a really interesting question right now, because I don't doubt for 1 second that Eddie Jones will have them in a really good place for next year's World Cup.
Is he going to still exist?
That's the thing.
That's it. There's like a massive push on from the English rugby press, their former players. They want rid of Jones. They've had enough. they're talking about maybe who could we get? Who would be good for us? Oh, Andy Farrell would be good. And there was even talk of them trying to get Lancaster back. But like, what are they talking about? This guy is brilliant at getting teams ready for the World Cup, and the World Cup is all that matters. Like, England can win another championship. What difference is it going to make to them?
And I guess there's a chance that even with Eddie Jones and a team that isn't firing on all cylinders, they can still pick up Six Nations here and there. They don't need to be at their very best to win a Six Nations, whereas Ireland, for example, tend to need to be very, very good to win a Six Nations. The same probably goes for Wales and Scotland, whereas France and England and the resources that they have, they can be fine and they can still have a really good chance of winning a Six Nations. So the thing is, when England don't contend for a Six Nations, they've really underperformed, and it is remarkable that has happened so often over the last little while. But you can't argue with Eddie Jones and his record in a World Cup, and in 2018, you would have got long odds on England making a World Cup final, and then come 2019, it looked as if they were one of the best teams in the world. So he's got a very recent track record of doing it. If I was an England fan right now, to be honest, maybe this is just coming from an Ireland, or looking at this through an Ireland prism, I would probably want Eddie Jones to stay on, because as you say, the World Cup is, if you get good World Cup results, it makes up for everything in between. Yeah. I mean, the here and now is also important as a sports fan, but the World Cup is the be-all and end-all. Maybe that's just speaking as an Irish person, and getting to a quarter-final is our limit. And
would you give Andy Farrell a new contract just to ward off any of these issues?
Well, I think at this point the RFU are probably delighted with how Andy Farrell has done, and I think it would be surprising if they weren't planning on handing out a new contract. I don't know what the reality is of the links to England, how real the threat is of him getting poached. But there's obviously been a few situations in the not-too-distant past in Irish rugby, especially with the likes of Munster getting coaches taken away, or coaches wanting to leave. And I mean, the pull for someone like Rassie Erasmus back to his home country was quite a big deal. Does Andy Farrell still feel the same way towards England, or does his own history within the England camp, has that soured that to the point where he's a
Dubliner now? He's been living here for a long time. It's a great place to live, especially when things are going well for you. You know, it's like.
The only thing is that his son could literally pick up the phone and say, "Listen, go on 2027."
But his other younger son could play for Ireland if we keep him here.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I mean, that's what I'm actually. That's been at the back of my thinking this whole time. Like, we should just give him a lifetime contract here, some kind of professor emeritus of Irish rugby after this. If he doesn't want to be a head coach anymore, just to make sure that the next one plays for us.
Who's more essential to Irish rugby, Stuart Lancaster or Andy Farrell?
Well, they're both pretty important, aren't they? Ironic that their failure at the World Cup has resulted in a blossoming in Irish rugby. So you'd want to keep them both around if possible.
Yeah. Failure, not a bad thing, it turns out.
Well, certainly you can learn from it. There are setbacks in sports. Ooh, who knew that was something you could learn from? Suggestions sent into the OTB Instagram story. Stephen Bennett Magic says Uno Grady and Kevin Ivers. Cork Hurler says Mike Campbell. Colin Brady says put Man United in the red. We did. Dee McCauley says Derry City top of the league, lads, end of, after a 1-0 win at Talca Park. We haven't talked about Duffy yet, but we will a bit later. Tyke Fanning says Cork Hurlers green seem to be building a nice squad with serious attack and improving defence, and they're doing all the best Cork things that you would want to see, like fast, hard running, beautiful striking, and yet at the same time they're also kind of niggly, tight in defence, un-Cork-like when it comes to that sort of stuff. But yeah. So, look, the red storm is rising. We've been saying it for so long. Eventually, we're going to be right. Even the stop clock is right. Twice a day.
Just on that, you mentioned Derry City there and their win against Shelbourne last week. This kind of brings us nicely onto the green. We're going to do a bit on Irish football here. Damien Duff has been good value, I think, in most of his media dealings so far, to say the least. He was speaking in the aftermath of the game last week. He said, first of all, just on the pitch, he said, forget about save Talca Park, save the pitch, or give us a new pitch. And then there was questions regarding the margin of defeat. They lost 1-0 to a side who would consider themselves to be title contenders. The problem for Shelbourne at the moment, it seems, is that they just can't score a goal. But getting a 1-0 defeat, would that have been a moral victory? And probably no prizes for guessing how Damien Duff would have responded to such a question. Can I curse? No, that comment for me is utter bollocks. That's what I told the lads. If it's one of them, it's okay because we've lost 1-0 to Derry. We can all effing leave the building and get a new staff and get a new squad in. Did we create a lot on Friday? No. Were we good on the ball? No. But we never felt threatened. But to go in and say that's all right, we'll take the 1-0? No. effing no chance. So excuse my French. I've not seen that, but letting them know that's not what I think either. So absolutely not. I haven't spotted it, but never will, because I've flung my hat on the guys, and they're a great group. So don't talk about giants sleeping giants. Don't talk about moral victories. They are the two rules of engaging in media dealings with Damien Duff, it seems.
But let's broadcast these live in future, because they are box office.
100%.
So also, speaking of Irish football, Michael Obafemi's in the green.
Yeah. How many Ireland caps do you think Michael Obafemi has?
7.
1.
What?
Michael Obafemi has 1 Ireland cap.
Wow.
It was that the time Martin O'Neill stuck him in to get him capped, essentially. That's the only time he's played for Ireland. He's been brilliant over the last 7 games, in particular for Swansea City. He's dropped down to the Championship after a pretty tough little while. And it's been a situation where Michael Obafemi has not only been playing poorly for a while, but he's also been kind of questioned about his professionalism, and I'm sure it's been a pretty challenging time. But it looks like there are early shoots of a resurgence very early in his career, let's not forget. So it's 5 goals in his last 7 games at this point, 2 goals and an assist at the weekend, and you can watch the goals online. They were brilliant, sort of playing off the last man as a central striker. That raw pace that we don't really have in the squad is something that I think Stephen Kenny will probably try and tap into with his next squad. Let's not forget that as well. Stephen Kenny's first Ireland squad included 8 forwards in it, and not one of them was Michael Obafemi. And Obafemi put up a tweet at the time saying interesting, and it wasn't very cryptic. I kind of think we all knew that he was pretty pissed off to not make it. But Kenny has been open enough about expressing doubt about his ability to play as a lone striker. Often played in a pair when he was playing games for Southampton. The formation then they were playing with Swansea at the weekend was a 3-4-2-1, which isn't... you could almost copy and paste that into Ireland and still have the best of this Ireland team coming out on it. So this could be a situation where, with Adam Ida out, could we have Michael Obafemi leading the line in these friendlies against Belgium and Lithuania?
Well, let's see him anyway.
I think so.
You know,
a couple of other bits from the weekend. Obviously, Will Keane scoring again. He's going to get promoted and hopefully playing in the Championship next year. If he's able to, I think he's got 17 goals this season. If he's able to replicate half of that in the Championship next season, he'll become a contender in the short term at least. And there was news as well on Andrew Omobamidele. You have Dean Smith coming out at the weekend. He said he went back to see the specialist, and they've put him in a corset at the moment. They are a little bit worried about him, so I think he will be in that for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So this is a back injury, which doesn't look great at the moment. He's a lad with lots of potential, and he probably is still growing, but we have to make sure that his back gets settled. We know how dangerous it can be if you get a long-term injury in that area. So that's a little bit of a concern, because we hadn't heard too much from the Omobamidele front over the last little while, but that's kind of where things lay after the weekend on the Irish front. Michael Obafemi certainly in the green.
Yeah. We'll talk about Festi as well. You were in Pride Park on Saturday afternoon and got to see the whole Wayne Rooney experience. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Trent Alexander-Arnold is our last one in green. We're not going to do that right now. We're going to do that in proper detail a little bit later on with David Myler. But safe to say that you think he's the best right back in the world?
That's what it says on the doc. I see that Gabby Bonlahor is wondering if Reece James is actually a better option for England than Trent Alexander-Arnold. So the debate around who's the best in the league, who's the best of the country isn't even settled yet.
Yeah.
But they were both outstanding at the weekend. Reece James just back from injury.
You would have said decision making was a problem with Gabby Bonlahor throughout his career. Gifted with all of the talents, but never quite making the right decision.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, and I think Trent is probably just a touch better than Reece.
Reece James is very good.
Reece James, absolutely. Yeah. He's got 16 assists now as well, Trent, at this point, which is his highest ever tally in a Premier League season, and obviously the goal line clearance as well. Klopp said he wouldn't be in the team if he couldn't defend. So both sides of the ball is something that's been complimented with regards to Trent after Saturday night.
That is this week's Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
A reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're still a very busy show for you. Alan Quinn is going to talk to us about England minus Tulagi and what it means for them to be mid-transition. We're also going to hear from, as I said, David Myler a little bit later on the football. Give us your views. The Dele Alli Derby's on tonight. We'll talk about that too if you want us to. But now, next is former Irish rugby out half and current Dublin All-Star Hannah Tyrrell. First, here's Tom Condon and Ennis with Aisling O'Reilly talking about Limerick's form.
Do you not need to get that momentum for Championship, or are you still just looking to Championship and will concentrate on that? Yeah, like, I suppose, look, Limerick are on the road now since 2018, and I suppose everyone has just been accustomed to Limerick winning all the games and winning everything, and they're just not used to seeing this Limerick team like win or lose 3 games in a row. But look, again, I'm saying I wouldn't be panicking or worrying if I was a Limerick supporter or whatever, like, because it's a long year, and I suppose, look, they're just used to them winning the whole time. But look, John has his sights, and they'd have targets to be hitting and stuff. And look, I know the results aren't the way most people want it to be, but them boys out there know themselves where they want and where they are at their stage of fitness and stuff like that. So, like, they have targets that they're aiming for, and look, I won't be worrying at this stage.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Harry Maguire versus Johnny Evans.
Oh, Johnny Evans. Harry Maguire versus Steve Bruce. Steve Bruce.
Harry Maguire versus Wes Brown.
Wes Brown, better defender. We're talking about 1-to-1. Wes Brown all day.
It drives me nuts when football drags its heels in these things. Dreadful things have happened from concussions in longer term. We know that. However, something dreadful might happen on the actual field of play because that's not being taken care of.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.